Our next guest is Joe Barnes. Joe is the Director of Sports Marketing of Bud Light. In his role, Joe oversees marketing efforts behind the NFL, the NHL, the NCAA, soccer, and esports partnerships. Joe's worked at Anheuser-Busch, InBev for 7 years. Joe, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me, Maha.
Joe, how are you?
Good. How are you doing, Gary?
Really good. Let's get right into the meat of it. Let's talk about what's going on actually today. I mean, for people that know, VaynerMedia works with ABI InBev. We don't get to work on the Bud Light business, so this is fun for me to get some catch up as well. So what's going on today?
So today is the Bud Light Seltzer Battle of the Best. So, we like to call this the Super Bowl of gaming. So we took the top 16 streamers on Twitch, Tim the Tatman, Shroud, Dr. Lupo, these huge names, and they're going to be playing 4 different games across 3 different nights. And so, if you're not super familiar with esports and gaming, this would be like the equivalent of taking, LeBron James, Tom Brady, Aaron Judge, and, LeBron's on skates one night, Tom Brady's playing baseball the next, right? So they're playing these different games to establish who the all-around best gamer is. So we really love what we're bringing here. We're going to have a halftime show with Kygo on Friday during our grand finals. Just an overall really cool event.
How old, to my own education, how old is the event and how's it kind of built over time? Or is this the first one? I feel like I know about this. So this is not the first one, right?
So this is the first one. This is our inaugural event. And we had to take a different approach to it, right? Because we're coming in and making a big, bold statement that we're able to throw the Super Bowl of esports, which is, it's ambitious. But what we did is we worked with these streamers to kind of start some online conspiracy and speculation, kind of like a Hulu or Firefest type announcement where on Wednesday we had all of the streamers just post a cryptic key visual asset with no logo, no branding, and just the hashtag BOTB and hashtag ad. And we just saw, we actually had millions of earned impressions off of this where consumers are just trying to figure out what does BOTB stand for and just guess after guess after guess. And then on Thursday, we actually formally announced that this tournament happened. So we had a lot of great conversation. People were really excited to know what was coming, and it's the best gamers, right? So millions of social followers.
Understood. And so far so good from your perspective?
Yeah, so far so good. It's hard to get together that many people, but we've seen from consumers, we're getting a ton of good pickup, tons of good social conversation, and now the big thing's happening now with obviously the launch tonight. So
Joe, the kind of overseeing marketing for all these different factions, obviously, and units across all sports, not just esports. What's your perspective on like approaching partnerships in esports that may differ to what, obviously by looking at you, you're a young man, 7 years at ABI, but like in this early part of your career, any hot takes on some of the variable differences between working with something emerging like esports in comparison to something that's been around maybe for 100+ years like MLB or NHL or things of that nature?
Yeah, so I think twofold. One is that when we started to get into the gaming community and activating, we noticed that the beer occasions that, 100 years of baseball, people go into the pub to watch with friends, it wasn't established in the gaming space. So the big challenge for us is how do we create beer occasions in a space where it's not really endemic? So a lot of what we do with these partnerships are like, how do we have after hours content where the players are drinking beers and talking about gaming? Or how do we find ways to be more casual with our activations? The Battle of the Best, it's taking people out of their comfort zone. It's just not the best esports player. It's all these different games that they don't play, because for Bud Light, our mission is no matter how hard you game and compete, Bud Light celebrates those that play games and have fun, right? We're about fun, bringing fun to the world, as you might know from working with our brands in the past, but that's really our ambition, and to bring our fun Bud Light twist while also creating these new beer occasions is what we have to do in this space.
And from a beer business that's obviously looking at 21 and older, was it surprising to you, again, just making some assumptions around your general age group, was it obvious to you, or was it surprising when you started double clicking into how much 21 to, let's say, 45 interest there was in esports?
Very surprising. So a lot of people think this is very young, and it's not even like TikTok is young to us, but right now that just like Pete was saying, it's mid-20s, it's late 20s, And, people have been playing games for the past 10, 15, 20 years. So they may have started when they were teenagers, but now they're in their 30s, their 40s. It really has a broad spectrum. But for us, it is important. I mean, the bulk of the audience is in that 21 to 27 year frame. So that's what we're trying to do to recruit new consumers into the Bud Light brand family.
What about for the people that are watching that are corporate? What about the hurdles that have to be jumped over, or the perception of like senior marketers? I'm sure you're probably smiling inside, like the cliche thing that somebody's trying to innovate in a company, whether it's an outside agency or it's internal play of like, having that individual within an organization that tends to skew more into 20, 30 years, 40 years of experience, often doesn't have their finger to the pulse unless they are that kind of person or have a child often that's close to, like, is there any kind of hurdles within corporate environments of like trying to innovate in something new?
Sure, there definitely
or just rallying people to come on board with you and getting kind of that internal support. Maybe there's no friction up front, but then just keeping momentum, either or.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And I mean, we're a consumer first company. And so when the data is showing that our consumers are moving to the space, it helps, right? But then how do you justify investment, right? That's the big question that I'm often asked. And, we take a traditional sponsorship approach. If, we work with a Nielsen and we evaluate these partnerships, we look at the ROI, and, we have our organic own content, and we're able to look at, how many viewers we're reaching, what the ROI is on that. But also there's new metrics that get introduced to the company. And it's really important to take your time to get people comfortable with these metrics and then consistently use them so they're knowing how we can grow, what justifies the investment. And then I'd say the small things that do matter, if there are others that are trying to get the corporate excitement. I mean, we have like a video game room set up in our office now. Like, there's ways that we can do this to introduce these concepts that may be foreign to a lot of senior leaders, but once they understand the ecosystem, how it works, how Twitch works, it starts to make sense and they can see why the investment needs to be there.
I'm going to bring you in to ask the last question, but
Yeah.
I'm just going to give a quick shout out. I just want to continue to give a shout out to the Marketing for the Now, #Marketing for the Now community that's on Twitter, just asking questions, adding. It's really helping me guide it. So big shout out. Thank you for all of you who are watching and obviously on LinkedIn and Facebook and YouTube and all the other platforms that it streams on. We really appreciate you. But just to remind everybody as we continue this series, the comments, the quoting of our incredible guests and giving them love and following them means a lot to me as well. And just insights in your own questions dictates. So big shout out. Please say hello. #Marketing for the Now for everybody who wants to engage in the conversation and impact the content of the show. Please use that hashtag on Twitter. Maha, last question for Joe.
Yeah, Joe, I was just going to ask about the overlap and like the impact on e-commerce. Like, that is one of the things that we had talked about before. I think is just an interesting take, and not a lot of people think about gaming have an impact on e-commerce. What can you tell our audience about that?
Yeah, so e-commerce in beer is actually, it's very under indexed versus other CPG. So what we were able to do and target for an esports side is that we can target a digitally native young environment, and they're actually using e-commerce to buy not only Amazon and traditional CPG, but they're actually going on Drizzly and starting to order. So we're able to see a much higher take rate and usage rate when we have promo codes that we're able to give out in chat on Twitch or on Twitter, because this gaming audience is already so ingrained with the technology.
That makes sense to me. And Joe, do you think in general, like, that esports infrastructure with its technology stack and capabilities has a better chance long-term to prove out ROI? I mean, really, even the way, if you really think about it, one of the great challenges for beer brands and many other brands over the last half century is, what is the ROI of a patch on an NBA jersey, or, proper football in the World Cup, or just being a sponsor? Like, this game is brought to you by Bud Light. Like, as we think about where the world will be, over the next, decade and 2 decades, do you think esports in general has an inherent advantage as a genre in sports, where the tech stack may lead to clear last touch attribution or other variables that may actually skew in its advantage as we go over the next decade, where brands will feel even more confident to invest because they can actually see impact on their bottom line?
Yeah, I absolutely think so. And for us as a beer brand, it helps us to work with someone that's so technically advanced, because we need to be there too. Our consumers are already there. So it helps us to get caught up, so to speak, already being in that digital environment that's so much further advanced than a lot of other leagues because they have to, right? You know, League of Legends, Overwatch, these leagues didn't pause during COVID because they're able to constantly run through a digital era. So, I mean, you know, people are saying maybe it advanced 10 years, 5 years, whatever, but I think the shift's going to continue to happen in this space. Consumers are going to continue to be in this space. There's new and innovative ways to reach their consumer and fan base, which ultimately is what we're trying to do as brands by sponsoring these things.
Awesome.
I love
Joe,
it. Thanks,
thank you
Joe.
for your insights.